to Real Shame. It's a show where we review movies from our movie list of shame or movie blind spots. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
And before we get into the movie we like to review, we always like to talk about what we've been watching. And also, is this our 100th episode or is the next one our 100th episode?
This is our 100th episode.
Our 100, confetti.
Yay! Yeah, we didn't exactly bring party favors or anything
we should have.
to celebrate. Oh, well.
So
we keep it low-key on this show.
Happy 100 episodes. We did 100 episodes in less than a year. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
So we have a surprise for you. If you download the podcast or you looked at the title, you know what movie we're going to review. But before we talk about that movie, we always like to talk about what we've been watching. So I'm going to toss that over to Andy. And Andy, what have you been watching?
Alrighty. So when this airs, it's 2021, but we're actually filming this a week after Christmas. So I watched a bunch of Christmas movies. So I'll just do the Christmas roundup. I'm not going to go over these like in depth or anything like that. Most of these are rewatches. I watched Jingle All the Way with Schwarzenegger. Christmas with the Kranks, which I'd actually never seen before, and man, that has a very low rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't think it's completely deserved. I didn't think it was that bad. It's kind of all over the place, but it's not as terrible as I think a lot of the critics say that it is. Dead End, which is another Christmas horror movie, which I have seen before. It's kind of fun. It's kind of stupid too, but it's kind of fun. Trapped in Paradise with Nicolas Cage, John Lovitz, and Dana Carvey doing a really stupid voice. That movie goes on forever, and it's not really that good. The Santa Claus, the first one with Tim Allen. I was going to try and watch the part 2 and 3, but I didn't get around to it.
I wanted to watch that, but Kirby vetoed it.
She said no.
I think they're
not
fun.
A fan.
I think they're fun, right?
I think I've only seen the first one. I'm not sure. I know for a fact I've never seen the third one with Martin Short. I might have seen the second one. But yeah, I think I like the first one.
Yeah, I remember them being fun.
Yeah. Bad Santa with Billy Bob Thornton. Always fun time. Home Alone, which I usually watch that every Christmas. Christmas Vacation. I think I watch that just about every Christmas. I love that movie. The Family Stone. And then another movie that I have not seen before, which is a musical version of A Christmas Carol starring Albert Finney from 1970. It's called Scrooge, appropriately enough. I just thought it was interesting.
Not the Bill Murray Scrooge.
Not Scrooged with a D, just Scrooge.
I got you.
No D. Not a verb, I guess, or past tense verb. You got Scrooged. But no, Scrooge with Albert Finney, I thought it was pretty good, actually. And it has the OG OB Juan Kenobi. Alec Guinness plays the ghost of Jacob Marley.
OG OB.
Yeah. So that's kind of fun. And again, it's a musical, so there's like songs. Scrooge sings in it. It's interesting. It's not amazing, but I thought it was a pretty good movie.
They have a number called Bah Humbug.
No, they should have. He does have a song called "I Hate People," I believe, which I was like, I can relate. I can relate sometimes.
It feels like very on the nose.
Yeah, it was. But no, it was good. And then I saved the worst for last.
Oh.
I watched, and this will lead apparently into what you've been watching. I watched, like most people, I feel like that have HBO Max. I watched Wonder Woman 1984 on Christmas Day. And it was the worst Christmas ever. I thought it was absolutely terrible. I mentioned when we watched, I watched About Time. I said I liked it after I watched it, but then I thought about it more over the next few days. I liked it even more. I can also have the opposite effect. And with Wonder Woman 1984...
The more it sat with you,
Yes, with Wonder Woman 1984, after I watched it, I was like, man, that was bad.
Yeah.
But over the next few days, I just kept thinking about the illogical bullshit that's in it and just the crap. I mean, it's so corny and stupid and bad and awful and terrible. I hate it. I realize not everybody likes the DC films, but I say this is the absolute worst for me. I think it's worse than Suicide Squad or whatever you put at the bottom of the DC list. I think Wonder Woman 1984 is even worse.
Yeah, just jump on that.
Yeah.
I watched Wonder Woman 1984 too, and I 100% agree with everything you said. Some of the action was kind of cool, and I like the 80s-ness of it. I like that aesthetic, at least from the marketing campaign. But the whole movie just felt so, put together. It didn't feel cohesive. It just felt random. And, I agree with you. It's terrible.
Yeah,
It was a terrible
it was
movie.
shockingly bad, especially because I mean I don't think the first one is a masterpiece. I had some problems with it, but I thought it's head and shoulders above this one. It's way
They felt
better.
like two completely different movies, and I know they're like different, take place in different time periods and stuff. But the CGI in the new Wonder Woman is terrible. Like there's stuff where she's like running after the tank, where it's obviously like she's doing that in front of a green screen.
Yeah.
The what they did with Barbara Minerva, Kristen Wiig as Cheetah, like looks terrible. Like it looks.
Yeah.
It's
I was laughing.
It's not good. I don't know what Pedro Pascal was trying to do. He was so over the top. It just the tone of the movie just changed so much. Like the first action sequence you have is like this scene in the mall, and it's just like it's silly. And it's just like you come from like all the DC EU movies leading up to this, even the Wonder Woman movie leading up to this, and they are serious, but this one just seems so silly and so random. And it just doesn't fit. And the whole time you're just like scratching your head, like, what are we watching here? Because it's like a spoof at that point. And then like that stuff with the Athens at the beginning, or not Athens, Themyscira, where they're from. It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't explain the game, or was it mean? I guess that's supposed to be like the theme of the movie is presented. Diana learns that from this game, but it's like it doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't resonate and all this kind of stuff. It's not. I say skip it.
I mean, sure. People are going to watch it regardless, and I don't blame them for that because they want to see it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like most people are going to be disappointed. And I didn't look today, but the last time I looked at Rotten Tomatoes, it's still fresh, and I'm like, what are these critics watching? So, like, how is it that it's getting good review enough to be fresh?
So Dan Murrell, his YouTube channel, was watching that last night. It was last night, and he kind of broke down that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I guess Wonder Woman, when they first had the first set of reviews that came out for the embargo, it was like 72%, and then he like broke it up into like 3 buckets of reviews based on when they came out, and each progressive bucket, the rating is falling and falling for it. I think right now it's like at 62 or something like that. But the other thing is like they fast tracked a Wonder Woman sequel, even though Patty Jenkins says she wasn't going to come back. It looks like she's going to come back. The movie made $16 million in theaters in the U.S. And it's brought on, I think they said half of the subscribers to HBO Max, not the people that use it through HBO, through their cable subscription, but they call the retail customers HBO Max, half of them watched it that day on Christmas. It's a big hit. And, it's no indication on how good the movie is. It's indication on how little there is to watch, in my opinion. And if you want a really good breakdown, I suggest checking out Dan Murrell's breakdown. He does some good stuff on that. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Wonder Woman 1984 is just, I don't know. I can't think of anything that's really redeeming from it. Even the stuff with Chris Pine that was so good in the first one, like they bring him back, and the reason why they bring him back is kind of like okay, but it's just like when you think about it, it gets kind of creepy after a while. And then the other thing is like he doesn't bring anything to the movie like he did in the first one, so it's like, well, even why did we do that?
Not at all. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what you've been watching, and then I'll go into it. So Wonder Woman 1984. I did a big Christmas watch on Christmas Day. So I also watched Disney Plus's Soul, which was, much hyped, and it's good. It's a Pixar movie. Excuse me. It's a Pixar movie, and I thought Soul was good. I know a lot of people are putting it up there with like the top tier Pixar movies, and it doesn't quite sit that well with me, even though it is a movie about an aspiring musician and all that kind of stuff, which would probably and should bring me in. But I don't know if it's just watching at home or whatever. I just thought it was good and, but not great and not like amazing, like, some of the higher level Pixar movies. Like I would put like The Incredibles, I would put Up, I would put, maybe Inside Out, like on that top tier list, and that didn't quite get up that high for me. I think it's better than average Pixar in my opinion. And also watch Christopher Nolan's Tenet. And I'm not going to spoil it for you because I think you still kind of want to watch it. I'm kind of, I don't know how I feel about Tenet. I think after watching it, I thought it was good and it was enjoyable of a movie. I just think Christopher Nolan is just, he's not interested in making movies that relate to audiences, I think he just wants to make movies that he likes and stuff like that. And I think he kind of set up a couple of things he wanted to do with this movie and kind of telling the story. And I think those things he set up caused the movie to be worse off, right? So one of the things I'm going to say, and I don't think it's spoiling it, is that he wanted, if you saw a sequence or a scene that happened in the movie more than once, he wanted it to be shot in two different ways, right? So if you're seeing the same thing play out twice in the movie, he doesn't want to reuse camera shots that he's used previously, right? And then it kind of expands from there. And for me, some of those things I was watching, I'm just like, this doesn't even feel like a real take. Like it feels like practice and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, and and then again, same with the characterization. I just didn't feel for the characters and stuff like that. So I wasn't hot on like I said, I watched it and I enjoyed it, but then thinking about it, I think kind of like you did with Wonder Woman, it just kind of like I kind of cooled on it since thinking about it.
I'm more than cooled on Wonder Woman.
But that's kind of what I've been watching. Just a bunch of Christmas Day movies catch up for me. All right, so you ready to get into our 100th episode spectacular?
Yes.
This is a movie I haven't seen.
Yes. So again, I don't envy you for having to go this long without seeing it, because this is a movie that is incredibly hyped up, much like Casablanca. Yep. In 1939, 24-year-old Orson Welles was invited to make a film in Hollywood by Radio Keith Orpheum Pictures, or as we typically call it, RKO Pictures. He was given a dream contract. He'd be able to make a film, actually 2 films, where he would have complete artistic control, and also the most important thing a filmmaker would love to have, and that's final cut of the film. The second film of this particular contract was actually never made. He did end up making a second film with RKO, but it wasn't under this contract, and he did not have final cut on this the next film that he would make under RKO. But the first film became what we know as Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane.
Is that really your idea of how to run a newspaper?
I don't know how to run a newspaper, Mr. Thatcher. I just try everything I can think of.
Charles, you know perfectly well there's not the slightest proof that this armada's off the Jersey
Hello,
coast.
Mr. Bernstein.
Excuse me, Mr.
Can you
Kane.
prove it isn't?
This just
Mr.
came
Bernstein,
in.
I'd like you to meet Mr. Thatcher.
I'll just
How do you do, Mr. Thatcher?
Leland,
Hello.
Mr. Thatcher, my ex-guardian.
From Cuba.
We have no secrets from our readers, Mr. Bernstein. Mr. Thatcher is one of our most devoted readers. He knows what's wrong with every copy of the Enquirer since I took over. Read the cable.
Girls delightful in Cuba, stop.
Could send you prose poems about scenery, but don't feel right spending your money. Stop. There is no war in Cuba. Signed, Wheeler. Any answer?
Yes, dear Wheeler, you provide the prose poems. I'll provide the war.
That's fine, Mr. Kane.
Yes, I rather like myself. Send it right away.
I came to see you about
Yes,
this campaign of
Thatcher.
yours. This Enquirer campaign against the Public Transit Company.
Mr. Thatcher, do you know anything we could use against them?
So Citizen Kane came out September the 5th, 1941, which means as of 2021, it is celebrating its 80th anniversary. Yes, the movie is 80 years old.
80 years young.
80 years young, yeah. But Orson Welles, of course, he got his start in radio. Everybody knows Orson Welles, or at least I hope you do. He had a great, voice. He had a great voice for radio. He also did like plays and stuff. He directed and acted in. He loved Shakespeare. It was known as the Mercury Theater. And actually, when he came to Hollywood to make Citizen Kane, he brought along much of his entourage, much of his Mercury Theater entourage. So they are in not only Citizen Kane, but in the movie that he would make after that, the Magnificent Ambersons, if I can say that correctly. Of course, he did the War of the Worlds broadcast in 1938, so 3 years before he did Citizen Kane, where he did a telling of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, and supposedly a lot of people, even though they came out and said before they started it was, obviously a dramatization, people that tuned in that didn't catch that part were like, aliens are invading. But
Not surprised one bit.
but also probably a lot of that stuff is apocryphal or whatever. You know, I mean, it's like it's taken on a larger than life kind of legend over the years. Who knows how many people actually were stupid enough to, well, I don't want to say stupid enough, were gullible enough to believe that. I'm sure there were some people. Hell, I might have tuned in if I was alive back then and be like, oh my God, aliens are invading. But I don't know. But Citizen Kane stars Orson Welles in the title role as Charles Foster Kane. Also stars Joseph Cotton, Agnes Moorehead. I think most people know Agnes Moorehead as Endora from the television show Bewitched, which is a shame because she's an absolutely amazing actress. I mean, she's only got a small part in this movie. She plays Kane's mother that sends him away. So she's only in the movie for like 5 minutes.
And
10
she's
minutes.
the mother of the main witch character in Bewitched, right?
In Bewitched, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But like in the Magnificent Ambersons, she has a much bigger role in Orson Welles' second movie, and she is phenomenal in that film. I think a lot of people back in the day watched it and thought her performance was really bad, and I think even people now kind of watch the film and aren't sure what to think. If you think her performance in Magnificent Ambersons is bad, you know nothing about acting as far as I'm concerned. Because she's terrific. She's also in a really terrific episode of The Twilight Zone called The Invaders. Everett Sloan's another guy that he brought from the Mercury Theater, on and on and on. It was based largely on William Randolph Hearst, who was a very rich, very powerful newspaper mogul at the time. He had a mistress who was an actress named Marion Davies, and she also is supposedly played or kind of portrayed by a character in the film under the name Susan Kane. That's the second wife of Charles Foster Kane. And then Kane lives in Florida. He ends up building a mansion called Xanadu in the movie, but it's based on William Hearst's Hearst Castle, sometimes referred to as San Simeon because it was in San Simeon, California. Okay, all of that biographical stuff out of the way. I don't know how to get into it other than to get into it. You can be Jedediah Leland, who is the drama critic in Citizen Kane. You can take his role, and you can tell us what you thought of Citizen Kane.
I actually thought Joseph Cotton as Jedediah Leland was really good.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked his role here. So I was talking to Kirby, and she was mentioning there's 3 great movie mysteries, and I don't know exactly. I would add to the list, but one is, what is Rosebud? Mm-hmm. I probably should have ended with that one. One is Rosebud. Who's Luke's father? And the other one I said was What's Soylent Green, but she told me it was incorrect, and I can't think of the third one. I'm gonna leave you guys hanging. I can't think of the third one right now. Yeah.
Nothing's jumping out at me.
Yeah. So anyways, the reason why I said that is because I knew what Rosebud was going into the movie, right? Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about like my knowledge of Citizen Kane, because I do.
One second. If you don't know what Rosebud is, this movie's 80 years old, but if you still don't know what Rosebud is, or you haven't watched this film, turn back now, watch the film, then come back. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
There'd be spoilers in these
big
waters.
Time. It's 80 years old. It's about time.
So I do think there is some kind of like community knowledge with Citizen Kane, right? So I knew Rosebud was, spoiler, the sled. And I also heard maybe apocryphal that Rosebud, the reason why the writer, Mank put Rosebud into the movie.
Here we go.
But I'm not going to say why. You can Google that yourself. But I heard that too. And then some of the things I heard about, Citizen Kane was like its direction, and that, he was one of the first people to kind of take the camera and like do some of these like Dutch angles or do some of these kind of camera moves. And prior to this, a lot of movies were shot with a locked off camera where it was more like a film stage play. And this one was more kind of like angled, and he kind of did some stuff that we would consider and see as normal in modern cinema, right? Mm-hmm. So I knew that kind of going into it. So, and I also know that it makes a lot of these like Sight and Sound top lists, these AFI top lists, is like it's constantly ranked number 1 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had all this kind of leading up and before I watched the movie, and I gotta say I actually enjoyed the movie a lot.
Good.
I don't think it's the best movie ever made. I don't think it's number 1, but I don't think I'm alone in that opinion too.
Yeah, no, right.
But I actually really kind of enjoyed it. It kind of pulled me in. I was very interested. I did not know that it was based off of William Randolph Hearst's life. In watching it, there are a lot of modern kind of celebrities that I can draw dotted lines to, and I can be like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like Rupert Murdoch a little bit, for taking like Fox News as a media empire, or some other people like that. You can kind of draw that dotted line. So I do think it's it's a pretty good portrayal, pretty specific, and you can kind of draw it out to modern people and stuff like that. I was actually really taken back by the direction. I don't know if it was something I was focusing on because I knew going into the movie that it was heralded for that and all that kind of stuff. But I really liked some of the camera moves he did. One of the ones that really stood out to me was when they were in the opera house he built for his wife, and the camera just kind of goes up from the stage like almost like an elevator, and then you're going up past the stage. You see all the scenery hanging. Then all of a sudden you get to the top of the rafters and you have the two guys that are working. They're the stagehands or whatever. And they make a comment about how well his mistress is singing.
Well, I think the one guy holds his nose. Yeah.
So I really like that kind of stuff. So I actually really liked it. I don't know if so the last thing I'll kind of add to the end of that is that because I knew what Rosebud was, there wasn't any mystery to me in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And I felt like the whole wrapper of the movie telling us, Kane's life story was the reporter trying to figure out what Rosebud was. And I felt like that was not excessive, but it was unnecessary, right? So it didn't bring anything to me on the movie. Like I felt like if this was a more of a straightforward narrative, it would have worked better for me. I mean, like that's being said, I like the movie and all that kind of stuff, but I thought it would have worked better without that kind of figuring out what Rosebud is. But again, that could be me, almost 80 years later watching it, knowing what it is and not being grappled by the mystery of that and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So this movie, again, I mean, I feel like, we kind of had a similar thing with Rebel Without a Cause. Although I think Rebel Without a Cause is even though Rebel Without a Cause is technically a newer film, it came out 14 years after Citizen Kane, it's way more dated than this movie, in my opinion. Because, I feel like this movie and the movie that we're going to watch or review on Wednesday, even though it's a new movie, it takes place also in the 1930s and 1940. You can draw a lot of parallels between what was going on then and what's going on now. Because, some things never change.
I guess
meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? I mean, it's the same thing. But okay, but this movie, just like with Rebel Without a Cause, I feel like it's impossible to watch it unless you've been living under a rock or in a cave. It's impossible to watch this movie without knowing all the hype behind it. So I feel like it's very difficult for you or anybody in a modern audience to sit down and watch this film and not have all that stuff kind of sitting in the back of your mind. So again, I don't envy you seeing this for the first time. I saw this film.
I was going to ask you, do you remember the circumstances you first saw it under?
I think the first time I saw this film, so I took a film history course in the late 90s at university, and I believe we watched this in that class. And I thought my teachers were bad. I didn't feel like I learned very much from them at all. I'm sorry. I don't even remember their names. But it was two people. But anyway, we watched it because it's just like, hey, it's Citizen Kane. It's the greatest movie of all time. You got to watch this, So I feel like I watched it, but I was bored. I was like, because I didn't. The textbook that we had for the class, it has a lot of pages. It didn't have like an entire chapter, but it had most of an entire chapter devoted just to Citizen Kane. And I think we either only read part of that or we didn't read it at all and we just watched the movie or something like that. So I basically watched the movie and I didn't get it, because I was expecting it to just bowl me over. But also at the same time, I mean, I just hadn't seen as many movies then. And I think I was waiting for something really exciting or something. I don't know what exactly. I didn't know what my expectations even were, but my expectations were not met. I mean, I was like, I didn't think it sucked or anything. I just was like, I don't understand like what's going on. So what I did was I ended up reading the textbook for that class from cover to cover because I thought it was really interesting. And so I did read all of that stuff that the guy had to say about Citizen Kane. And so not long after that, I think I rented it and rewatched it. And I think this is a movie that, much like Rebel Without a Cause, I feel like I'm not saying you can't enjoy it. Obviously, you said you liked it. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it just watching it for the first time, but I feel like it becomes even richer when you read all about it and you kind of know who these people were based on, and you read about their lives and what, and, you know, and how closely it in fact really is, you know, to what actually happened in their real life. And then also, not only that, about, as you mentioned, all the technical innovations and the technical, you know, dazzling things that he did with the camera. Now, I have heard that Citizen Kane, you know, pioneered all these things, you know, this, you know, all these different things that it pioneered. But then I've also heard other sources say, actually, you can look at other films that came out way before Citizen Kane that did this technique and that did that technique. But no matter what you say, he packaged it all into one movie. Exactly. As far as the narrative of the movie goes, and I'm not necessarily coming up with all this on my own. Actually, some of it's in that textbook, because I still have the film textbook that I was looking at it over the last few days. But the thing about, so the beginning of the movie, you see the no trespassing sign, and everything is very dark. The castle is dark. You know, Xanadu is very dark and dismal, and you have a series of kind of dissolves and fades, and it gets closer and closer and closer to the castle. Then it finally is in Charles Foster. I don't want to keep calling him Charles Foster Kane. I'll just call him Kane. It gets into Kane's room, and he's dying. He's on his deathbed. He utters the famous last, you know, line of his life, Rosebud. He drops the snow globe, and it breaks, and then you have this kind of reflected in the glass.
I thought that looked cool.
Yeah, with the nurse come in and everything. Then it cuts to this news on the march, this very, very bombastic kind of overview of his life. And again, News on the March is meant to be kind of a parody of what is it? The March of Time, which was a newsreel footage, like basically serial newsreel footage that aired in, I say it aired like it's on TV. It was shown in movie theaters basically from the mid 1930s all the way up until I believe the early 50s. But it had that guy who was like, oh, Charles Foster Kane died today or whatever. So that serves as like an abstract. So, you know, when you write a paper for school or something, the opening paragraph is your kind of summary about what I'm going to accomplish in this paper. And that's kind of what this is. It's an overview of his life from beginning to end, but it's very superficial. It hits all the kind of highlights and lowlights. Oh, he had a mistress. Oh, he lost when he ran for governor, or, you know, blah, blah, you know. Oh, and then now he's dead. He lost his fortune, and he did this or whatever. So you get this very kind of short, condensed look into his life. And then it cuts to them all in they've watched the News on the March, and it's all like backlit and in shadow. You can't see anybody's face.
Yeah.
And from what I was reading, the intent of that, and if you notice, the reporter whose name is Thompson, I was like, I can't forget his name. Thompson, the reporter, you don't ever really see his face, or you don't see his face clearly in the movie, because he's meant to act as the audience surrogate. He's us. And we're trying to find out what the hell is Rosebud.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that everybody always points out is nobody actually really heard him say Rosebud. Nobody's in the room to hear him say Rosebud. I think the butler at the end says that he heard him.
Yeah, he was like in the hallway or something.
But you know, nobody actually is in the room to hear him say Rosebud.
He's like, I heard him say it twice.
Yeah. But this reporter, acting as an audience surrogate, he then goes, at first he starts with the nightclub singer. Well, now she's a nightclub singer, Susan, who was Charles Kane's second wife. That first his mistress, then his wife. He starts with her to kind of find out what Kane's life. And had he started there and she actually talked to him, he would have learned about the end of Kane's life first. But because she shoos him away, he then starts at the beginning. So he starts with Thatcher's memoirs, which are unpublished. And I love that. They're in this huge room, this vault, and it's echoey. And that's another thing. Not only did he do a lot of visual techniques, he did a lot of sound techniques. There's a lot of echoey things or overlapping dialogue and stuff like that. Because, again, Orson Welles, that is, came from a background of radio. So he knew how to maximize all that stuff and have the greatest impact. But he goes and he reads Thatcher's memoirs, so he gets the young man, you know, the young Charles Foster Kane. I keep saying I'm not going to say Charles Foster Kane. He gets the young Kane's life up till he basically takes over the Inquirer. And then he goes on to visit Bernstein is next. And Bernstein was always Kane's kind of right-hand man, not his best friend, that was Jedediah Leland, but Jedediah Leland and he had a falling out, whereas Bernstein always stuck with him.
Bernstein was like his yes man, like his
yes man.
Yeah, in the movie we watched Wednesday, there's some interesting parallels between the way those two he looks like with, I guess, what the real life counterpart for him looks like.
Right. But Bernstein paints him in a very flattering light.
Yeah.
You don't really get any negative out of Bernstein. Thatcher talks about how Kane was spoiled and was a brat and never really appreciated, even though Thatcher was making him rich, right? He was investing this money for him and doing all these financially savvy things, but he was a dick to Thatcher. But then Bernstein is all smiles, and he's like, "Oh boy, I sure did love Kane. He was great. He was great." Then the next person he goes to visit in the hospital is Jedediah Leland, and I agree with you. I love Joseph Cotten. He's an amazing actor.
I liked his old age makeup a little bit. That was kind of cool.
Well, and that's another thing. I think because the movie's in black and white, the old age makeup looks good. Like, I don't think it looks bad.
And on that point, I was reading. So Orson Welles kind of looked like the older version of Orson Welles, like the 60-year-old version of Orson Welles. That's what he looked like in real life. But when he was young, I thought that's what Orson Welles looked like when he was making the movie. Like, because he was 24 when he made it. But the young makeup, too, to make him look really young, like at the beginning, the beginning part of the movie, I thought worked really well. And he did look very good. And supposedly they used, like, temporary, like, facelifts and makeup like that to make him look really young. And I thought it looked really good. Like, it really passed.
I'm sure he didn't look that old. He's only 25.
I mean, of course, this is from IMDb, so we'll take that trivia with a grain of salt, but that's what I was reading for sure.
No, but I love that scene where he wants to raise the readership. He wants more readership of the Inquirer. So it only has 26,000 or something readers. He goes to the Chronicle and it's got 495,000. And it shows the photo of them, and then it is them. And pans back out, and he's like, "Hey, I got all these guys from the Chronicle." And then he does that kind of dance and the song with the girls and everything. And I love the way that it cuts between him kind of dancing and singing and rolling around or arm in arm with the girls to Jedediah Leland already beginning to question. He's like, wait, these guys, just yesterday they were loyal to the Chronicle. Why are they? But I love the fact that he's talking to Bernstein and you still see Wells in the reflection of the window dancing and having a good time. It's a really great little photographic technique. So he talks to Jedediah Leland, who's a little less flattering because he and Kane had a falling out, especially when it came to his ideals and how the fact that Kane basically just thought he could buy people, and just do with him whatever he wanted to.
He seemed to start out like altruistic, but then it seemed at some point the switch flipped and he was more about becoming popular and having adulation and having crowds of people support him than being like true or trying to present the true or trying to be a good man or whatever.
Right. And then from Jedediah Leland, he moves back to Susan, who now is finally willing to talk about Kane, which is good because that fills in the last little part of Kane's life when he basically kept her prisoner in this gigantic fortress, but it really was kind of a prison for her. And she just sits around doing jigsaw puzzles.
But she didn't seem interested in leaving either. When he's like, we're going to go, he says, we're going to go camping. No. Or they're going to go the beach or something like that.
Yeah, they go camping,
and then, they bring out all the tents and she's like, I don't want to go camping. It's like, okay, well.
Well, she wanted to go to New York and live it up. And she didn't want to be in Florida cooped up in this giant mansion where, again, you have all this ornate furniture and the rooms are so huge.
The room's so huge, But
apparently, as we will see, if the next movie we're going to watch is Any True to Life, Hearst Castle was a lot like that, right? San Simeon was a lot like that. But yeah, she finally just gets the nerve to walk out on him. And he's devastated, and he begins to destroy the room, but he comes upon her snow globe that she owned, and it reminds him, obviously, of his early upbringing, so it kind of brings him back full circle, at least in that memory. And then I love that shot, geez, when she leaves, and she's so far away, and there's a lot of this in that movie. There's a lot of, we didn't mention the fact that there's a lot of deep focus photography in the movie, so where you can see everything is in focus from the foreground to the background rather than things in the background being blurry or whatever. Most of the movie, you can see all the way, from here to here. You can see all the way through the screen. But you see her walk away, and she just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But then it fades. It goes back to him, and he's really tiny.
Yeah.
And he's got all these rooms or these doorways between him. And then when he finally walks through, he walks past, because he's been destroying the room, and all the servants have come to look and see what's going on. He walks past all of them without saying a word. He's still got the snow globe, I believe, in his hand, and he walks in between the mirrors on either side of the hall, and his reflection is just reflected, thousands of times. Or it's just such a powerful, cool looking scene.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's deeper meaning behind it, but I just think it looks cool. But then finally, after he talks to Susan, the reporter that is, Thompson, goes down to Xanadu itself, because they're taking pictures of a lot of the artwork, and they're kind of moving things and burning things.
They're getting everything ready for like an estate sale or something like that.
And they're like, "Did you ever find out what Rosebud is?" And of course he says no, and he's got some of Susan's jigsaw puzzle pieces in a box, and he sets them down. He's like, "No, I was just looking for pieces of a puzzle or whatever." Walks out, and then the crewmen that are there are burning some things in the furnace, and what do they put in the furnace? Rosebud the sled.
The sled.
So you finally find out at the end, in case you didn't know, after 80 years what Rosebud is, you finally find out what it is. But yeah, that's kind of the whole thing with the movie is, and after that, I'm sorry, that's not the final shot of the movie. The sled burns, and then the camera retreats back outside of Xanadu, back to the no trespassing sign, and we're done. So we have gone from being outside the gates, we went into Kane's house, then through the reporter, again, acting as the audience surrogate, we find out, based on talking to people, and again, how reliable are these people? Are they reliable narrators?
Yeah, you can get a little Rashomon action
right,
going on.
right. But he talks to all these people, he fills in all the gaps. Now, again, the story that he gets from all these people is definitely more detailed than the news on the march thing that we got at the beginning, but there's still some things that I kind of wish that they would have dwelled more on, like what was his reaction to, because his first wife and son were killed in a car crash. The movie doesn't say much about that. You hear about that in the news on the march part, but you don't ever really see his grief over that, I feel like, in the movie. And I'm not saying that's a fault of the movie. I mean, just like with anything, you don't always get all the details that you want out of somebody's life. I also kind of wish that you saw more conflict between Jedediah and Kane before they kind of part ways, because eventually Jedediah just says he wants to transfer to the Chicago paper. And then eventually he gets fired because he's going to write an unflattering review of...
drunk, passed out of the typewriter.
He's drunk, passed out. And apparently that really happened to Mankiewicz, the screenwriter. Yeah. Because before, or at one point, he was a drama critic, or was a critic for something, and he was supposed to write a review, and he was so drunk he passed out. And so he took that story himself, because he wrote the screenplay for Citizen Kane. Or did he? I don't know. But yeah, and he used that within. But yeah, no. So I read a ton over the last few days about kind of Hearst and all the other people, because the movie Kane is not just based on Hearst, although that's the biggest kind of influence that they used. I didn't write down the other people that, I think Joseph Pulitzer is another source that they kind of drew from. But then Kane himself is also based on, and again, I didn't write their names down because I only got so much space on my notes. But Kane also the inspiration was also drawn from two very wealthy Chicago guys. And I think both of those guys had young mistresses. And I think one of them, he tried to make an opera singer. So, they drew from a lot of different sources. The guy, Geddes, that's his chief political rival when he's running for governor, Geddes is based on a real guy that William Randolph Hearst had clashes with, named Charles F. Murphy. Again, I think whether you read about this film before you see it, or you see it like I did and then you go back and read about it and then you watch it again, I do feel like the movie becomes a lot richer, just based on kind of like, oh, now I see where they got that, I heard about that story or whatever. But I think no matter how you slice it, I mean, we both agree it's not our favorite film of all time. I don't necessarily consider it the greatest film of all time, but it's certainly great. Yeah. And I think it's definitely worth watching. It's a fantastic film, and I think it was a good choice for the 100th episode.
I think it still holds up, and it's still like an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. Did you read on the trivia that every nomination it got at the Academy Awards was booed?
I didn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if Hearst had plants in the audience that were like, hey, you know, boo it, whenever. Because, William Randolph Hearst definitely used his influence to try and suppress the film.
Yeah.
And so apparently it didn't get as wide a release as it possibly could have because of Hearst's anger. At more so, from what I understand, it was more so at the way that it portrayed Marion Davies or the Susan Kane character. He didn't really care so much about how it portrayed him, but by God, you weren't going to talk about his lady that way. So he was very angry about that. But anyway, it was shot by a guy named Greg Toland. So again, Welles gets a lot of credit, deservedly so, for bringing it all together, but he worked with pros.
He had a bunch of collaborators that were really good atop that game.
Exactly. I mean, it's not like he came in and just did everything and knew how to do everything. He learned a lot while he was making this film. But yes, he deserves a ton of credit for bringing it all together. I mean, he was the maestro or the auteur behind it all. But Greg Toland was a cinematographer, and Greg Toland was an experienced guy who wanted to work with Welles because he knew that Welles was new to Hollywood. He knew that Welles had carte blanche to make this movie. Yeah. So he's like, hey, we can do all kinds of cool photography stuff. And they did. I mean, they did do that in the movie. The score is by Bernard Herrmann, who had a tremendous working relationship with Alfred Hitchcock. Yep. He scored practically every Alfred Hitchcock film ever made, although they did have a falling out there towards the end. So I believe the final Hitchcock film, Family Plot, is scored by John Williams. And Bernard Herrmann went that same year and did Taxi Driver for Scorsese. Edited by Robert Wise, who became a director himself. Robert Wise also edited Magnificent Ambersons, I believe. And Robert Wise went on to direct movies like West Side Story. Anyone? Things like that.
Just small films.
Yeah, just little tiny things.
No one knows about.
Right. And then it's produced by John Houseman, who we will see more of an actor portraying him in the movie we're going to talk about on Wednesday. But John Houseman was an actor as well. He was a producer. He is best known if you've seen a movie called The Paper Chase. He is the Professor Kingfield in that. Is Kingsfield or Kingfield? I can't remember. I don't remember if it has an S in it or not. Anyway, he is the professor in The Paper Chase, plays a very big role. He's in other movies too, but that's probably the one that he's most well known for. The Paper Chase went on to be a television series as well, where he reprised his role in that. I love The Paper Chase. It's a great movie from the 70s. It was nominated for a lot of Academy Awards, but it only won one. It was nominated for Outstanding Motion Picture, Best Picture, but at the time called Outstanding Motion Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Orson Welles.
Should we boo for each one of these?
If you want to. Best Art Direction, black and white, because they made a distinction between black and white and color in those days, as far as those categories went. Best Cinematography, black and white. Best Film Editing, Best Score, Best Sound Recording, and finally, the one award that it did win the Oscar for, and that was Best Original Screenplay. It's credited to Herman Mankiewicz and Orson Welles. The two of them received an Oscar. This movie is 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And hey, I'm not going to argue with that. 90% audience score. 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. They actually did do an episode where they talked about this film, among other classic films, and obviously they gushed about it. So yes, they liked it. And Leonard Maltin, no surprise, gave it 4 stars.
Very cool.
Yes. Very cool movie.
Yeah.
Check it out.
I'm glad we sat down and watched it. I'm glad it's not something I did not like.
I am too. I mean, I figured I had a suspicion you would like it. Yeah.
All right.
Just like with Casablanca, but the movie that we paired it with.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So we got this great movie, Citizen Kane, steeped in history and all that kind of stuff. Based off of maybe some real life characters. So what movie did we decide to pair that with?
We kind of made a collective decision. This was fortuitous timing because I think probably as far back as episode 50. I knew you hadn't seen Citizen Kane, so we're like, for episode 100, we should probably do Citizen Kane. So we agreed on that pretty readily, and then we didn't really know what we were going to pair it with. But luckily enough, in early December, Netflix dropped a new David Fincher movie.
Who's an auteur of this era.
Yes, a new David Fincher movie. He hasn't done he's directed some TV stuff like Mindhunter or whatever, but he hasn't directed a film since Gone Girl. Yeah, in 2014. So it's been a 6-year, at least, feature film hiatus for David Fincher. But he's back with a black and white movie which details the creation of the screenplay of Citizen Kane by Herman Mankiewicz, or as his friends like to call him, Mank. And that is the title of the film. on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about it on Wednesday.
Just 2 short days from now.
Yep.
All right. That's it.
I think we've said enough. We've said it's okay. And again, you can talk about this movie all day as far as just the influence that it had and all the technical stuff and everything else.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I encourage anybody that's interested in that sort of thing, because it really is fascinating. Read about what the techniques they were using, photographic techniques, the audio techniques, read about William Randolph Hearst and all the people that this is based on. And I feel like you'll get a ton of enjoyment just out of reading that. And then watch the movie.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, that was everything about Citizen Kane. If you've seen Citizen Kane, hopefully you're at this point and you've seen it. Leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think. Is it in your top movies or whatever? If you can remember what that third question of the movie thing is, let us know. Maybe I'll get Kirby to comment down below.
Is it who you going to call?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh.
Is it what's in the box? I don't know which one it is.
What's in the box?
You know, there's too many, right?
What's in the box?
Ring that bell if you're watching us YouTube. Give an angel its wings. We answer emails on our Wednesday episodes, and those are sent to us realshame@gmail.com. Follow us on social media @realshame on Instagram. Like, subscribe, share, do all that sharing stuff, because that really does help the show, the podcast, and we really do appreciate that. And we'll see you next week as we cross another movie, and Wednesday as we cross another movie off our list. We'll see you soon, guys. Bye.
The third one is Daddy's Dying, Who's Got the Will?
There you
That's
go.
the third one.